The town of Bath shimmered with golden lights, its Georgian facades glowing in the gentle winter dusk. Amelia adjusted her scarf and looked up at the falling snow, the chill brushing her cheeks like a silent warning. Christmas was just days away, but in the Whitmore household, the atmosphere was anything but festive. Edward had just texted her. Not a call. Not a warm, see you soon. Just a cold message. Spending the week at the lodge. Need space. Amelia stared at the screen, her breath catching for a moment. It was the third year in a row that Edward had chosen solitude over their shared traditions. Their first few years together had been filled with mulled wine, tangled fairy lights, and laughter echoing through their Bath townhouse. Now, everything felt muted. She set her phone down and walked into the study, where a single box of untouched Christmas decorations sat in the corner. She'd taken them out that morning, telling herself she'd put them up, that Edward might change his mind. But of course, he hadn't. They had once agreed, no children. A mutual understanding, or so she'd thought. The wounds of her past, his supposed traumas, it all seemed like solid ground back then. But lately, Edward had become increasingly distant. Cold. Secretive. That night, curled up on the sofa with a book she wasn't really reading, Amelia's phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Edward. It was Charlotte. Well, not a message, an Instagram post. Amelia's heart thudded as she tapped it open. A blurry photo, filtered in soft pink. A bed. Sheets rumpled. Two figures. Her husband. And Charlotte. Laughing, tangled up together like it was 2009 again. The caption read, "Trying again for our Christmas miracle." Fingers crossed. Amelia froze. Her tea slipped from her hand, shattering across the hardwood floor. The next few minutes passed in a haze. She tapped through the rest of Charlotte's profile. Photos of her and Edward at a countryside lodge. Matching scarves. A table set for two. Hashtags like #ChristmasBaby and #worth the wait. So that's where he'd gone. That's who he'd chosen. The man who'd told Amelia he couldn't bear the thought of children, was trying for one with someone else. Charlotte. The same Charlotte who'd broken Edward's heart in university. The same Charlotte who had moved to Manchester and vanished for a decade. Apparently, she was back. And Edward hadn't just welcomed her, he'd betrayed Amelia with her. Amelia sat in the silence of their dimly lit living room, staring at the phone. Her hand trembled, but her eyes remained dry. No tears. Not yet. Instead, her mind began to spin, not with grief, but with realization. Edward hadn't been avoiding Christmas. He'd been avoiding her. And for the first time, Amelia saw the truth, sharp and unyielding, like frost on glass. Something inside her shifted. She stood slowly, walked to the window, and looked out at the falling snow. There would be no tears tonight. Only clarity. The next morning, the sky over Bath was grey and low, and the snow had settled like a blanket over every rooftop. Amelia hadn't slept. She spent the night pacing, her thoughts restless, her heart oddly calm. She wasn't crying. She wasn't breaking. Not this time. She opened the wardrobe, running her fingers across Edward's suits. They still smelled like his cologne. Expensive. Cold. She slid open a drawer and paused. Inside, carefully folded, was a scarf, not hers. Pale pink with gold stitching. Charlotte's. She recognized it from the photo. So she had been here. In their home. Amelia's jaw clenched. She had been careful for years. Kind. Understanding. Always giving Edward space when he claimed he needed it. She never pushed too hard when he withdrew, never questioned his long silences. She had accepted his walls. His supposed trauma. The way he flinched from touch, even hers. But it was all an illusion. Charlotte had been in their house. In their bed. And Edward had lied. For the first time in a long time, Amelia looked at herself in the mirror and didn't see someone small or pitiful. She saw a woman who'd survived years of subtle gaslighting, soft betrayals, and the quiet erasure of her own needs. And she was done. She pulled on her coat and boots, locked the front door, and walked briskly into town. Bath's streets were dotted with shoppers and tourists, all buzzing with seasonal cheer. But Amelia had a different mission. First stop, the solicitor's office. She had made no prior appointment, but the receptionist, seeing the cold fire in Amelia's eyes, didn't dare turn her away. "I need to begin divorce proceedings," she said firmly. The solicitor, a poised woman in her 40s, gave a small nod. "Infidelity?" Amelia only smiled. "I've got enough evidence. I just want out. Clean and fast." As the papers were prepared, Amelia's phone buzzed again. It was Edward. She let it ring. Then again. And again. She finally picked up on the fourth call. His voice was tight. "Amelia, I'm coming home. We need to talk." Her reply was cool. "Too late, Edward." A pause. "What are you talking about?" "I know. About Charlotte. About the lodge. About the baby you want with her." Another silence. Then, fumbling. "I didn't mean for you to find out like this." She almost laughed. "Oh, don't flatter yourself. I wasn't supposed to find out at all, was I?" "Amelia. I'm done. The papers will be ready by next week. I suggest you find somewhere else to celebrate your miracle." She ended the call and stared at the phone. He didn't call back. Good. That evening, as she returned home, something on the porch caught her eye. A gift box. Wrapped in red paper and tied with a gold ribbon. No name, no card. Amelia crouched down and opened it carefully. Inside was a single, antique key. And a note, written in familiar, elegant handwriting. "You always said you loved solving mysteries. Let's see if you still do. See. Charlotte." What sort of twisted game was this? Amelia stood frozen on the porch, the key cold in her hand. For a long moment, she considered throwing it into the snow and locking herself away from the chaos once more. But curiosity, sharp and burning, whispered louder. She went inside and placed the key on the kitchen counter, staring at it like it might explode. What sort of game was Charlotte playing? Was it a taunt? A trap? Or something far more calculated? She picked up the note again. "You always said you loved solving mysteries. Let's see if you still do." Amelia remembered those words exactly. She had said them to Charlotte, years ago, at university. They used to sneak into locked buildings, giggling like children, solving riddles left behind in dusty attics and forgotten libraries. That version of Charlotte had been her friend. A kindred spirit. Now she was Edward's mistress. Amelia returned to the key. It was small, brass, old-fashioned. The kind used on doors no one opened anymore. She looked around the house. Every room was accounted for, except, perhaps, the cellar. Her stomach twisted. The cellar was more of a forgotten storage space, damp and untouched. Edward rarely went down there. She hadn't stepped foot inside in years. Torch in hand, she opened the heavy door under the stairs. Cold air rushed past her like a whisper from the past. She descended slowly, her breath visible in the dim light. Boxes. Dust. Old furniture. Nothing unusual. Until she saw it. A panel at the far wall, different wood, slightly lighter, barely noticeable if one wasn't looking. Her hands trembled as she approached. She tried the key. It clicked. The panel creaked open. Behind it was a narrow passage, barely lit by a string of old fairy lights. Amelia ducked inside, her torch leading the way. The corridor turned left, then opened into a small hidden room. She gasped. Inside were remnants of a life she hadn't known existed. A second bed, neatly made. A vanity mirror. Books. A wardrobe with women's clothes, Charlotte's style, unmistakably. There was even a framed photograph on the wall. Edward and Charlotte. Smiling. In their house. He had made space for her. Here. A chill ran through Amelia's spine. She moved closer to the photo. It had been taken in this very room. A makeshift home within a home. How long had it been here? Had Charlotte lived here while Amelia went to work, cooked dinners, slept alone? And then her eyes landed on a journal, left open on the vanity. She hesitated. Then picked it up. Edward says he loves me but he won't leave her. Not yet. He says he needs to wait until after Christmas. He says Amelia's fragile. That she'll fall apart. Amelia felt the pages cut her like knives. But I've waited long enough. I told him I want more. And if I don't get it, I'll make sure Amelia finds out everything. Tears pricked her eyes, not from heartbreak, but from fury. So this was the plan all along. Charlotte had manipulated Edward, and him, Amelia. But something didn't add up. Why would Charlotte leave the journal behind? Why the key, the message? Why now? Unless she hadn't left it. Unless she hadn't planned for Amelia to find this. Something cold and metallic settled in her chest. She backed out of the hidden room, heart pounding. Her thoughts were no longer just of betrayal. Now they whispered of danger. The next morning, Amelia woke to the sound of silence. No birdsong, no footsteps. Just an oppressive stillness, as if the house itself had paused to hold its breath. Edward had not come home. She hadn't expected him to. After what she had discovered the night before, she doubted he would dare face her. Still, she checked the driveway. His car was gone. His coat still missing from the rack. No messages. No calls. She made a cup of tea with trembling hands, every creak of the kettle making her flinch. The hidden room lingered in her mind like a bad dream she couldn't shake. Was it even real? To be sure, she went back down. The door was still open. The room untouched. The photograph, the clothes, the journal, all there. Unchanged. She returned upstairs, her thoughts racing. Why would Charlotte leave a key and journal behind if she wanted to keep things secret? Unless she didn't leave them. Unless someone wanted Amelia to find them. She pulled out her phone and opened Charlotte's profile. Private. Still online. But no posts for days. Then she remembered something else, Charlotte's florist shop. A quaint little place at the corner of Walcott Street in Bath, filled with dried lavender and antique vases. Amelia had never dared step inside. Until now. She dressed quickly and headed out. The city was grey and damp, the streets glistening from an early drizzle. The florist shop stood quiet, its windows fogged. A sign hung in the window, closed until further notice. Amelia frowned. She tried the door. Locked. She peered inside, nothing seemed out of place. Just, lifeless. She tapped the glass, hoping someone might hear. No one did. Then, a voice from behind. Looking for Charlotte, you? Amelia turned. An elderly man stood near the bakery next door, carrying a bag of flour. He looked at her with a mix of curiosity and concern. Yes, Amelia replied. Do you know where she is? The man shrugged. She shut shop 3 days ago. Bit strange. always opened at 9 sharp, like clockwork. But this week, not a peep. Left in a right hurry, they say. Took nothing with her. A coldness crept down Amelia's spine. Took nothing. Not a single bouquet. Just locked up and vanished. Amelia forced a smile and thanked him, then returned to her car. Charlotte had disappeared. She dialed Edward's number. Straight to voicemail. Her hands shook. She dialed again. Still no answer. Something was wrong. And she wasn't imagining it. When she returned home, a black car was parked across the street. Tinted windows. Engine off. It hadn't been there earlier. She stood at her front door, glancing at the vehicle. No one exited. No one moved. She entered the house, locked the door, and drew the curtains. Later that evening, a knock at the door startled her. Firm. Measured. She looked through the peephole. 2 officers stood outside. She opened the door slowly. Mrs. Whitmore, the taller one asked. Yes. I'm Detective Inspector Harrow. This is DS Lane. May we come in? Amelia stepped aside, pulse quickening. Her mind raced. Had something happened to Charlotte? Is this about Charlotte Langley? She asked. D.I. Harrow exchanged a glance with his colleague. Actually, no, he said slowly. It's about your husband, Edward. Amelia's blood ran cold. What about him? He's missing. Amelia sat across from the detectives in her living room, trying to steady her breathing. The ticking of the clock on the mantel grew louder with each second, as if marking the countdown to something she didn't yet understand. DS Lane flipped open her notepad. When was the last time you saw your husband, Mrs. Whitmore? 2 nights ago, Amelia said quietly. He said he was going to visit an old friend. But he never came back. D.I. Harrow gave her a long, measured look. And did he say which friend? Amelia hesitated. No. He didn't. There was a pause. DS Lane scribbled something. Had you noticed anything off about him recently? Was he under stress? Amelia glanced at the fireplace. She wanted to scream the truth, to tell them about Charlotte, the hidden room, the journal, but something held her back. Fear. Because the moment she did, everything would change. And she still wasn't sure who she could trust. He was distant, she finally said. For months. I thought it was work, or maybe just him drifting away. D.I. Harrow nodded slowly. Mrs. Whitmore, we have reason to believe your husband may not have gone missing on his own terms. Amelia's eyes widened. What do you mean? We found his car. Abandoned near the edge of Prior Park. Doors unlocked. Keys inside. No signs of struggle, but no sign of him either. Her chest tightened. DS Lane closed her notepad. Have you heard of a woman named Charlotte Langley? This time, Amelia's heart nearly stopped. She nodded. She's his ex, she whispered. I think they were seeing each other again behind my back. The detectives didn't look surprised. We have reason to believe Charlotte may have played a part in his disappearance, Harrow said. We've been trying to contact her, but she's nowhere to be found. Her phone's off. Flat's empty. She's vanished. Amelia stared at them. So it wasn't just in her head. Charlotte really was gone, and Edward too. But why? Do you believe she harmed him? Amelia asked. We're not ruling anything out, Harrow said. But there's something else. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small evidence bag. Inside it was a single photograph. Her breath caught in her throat. It was her wedding photo. Torn in half. Found in the boot of Edward's car. Amelia took the bag with trembling fingers. The tear was jagged, splitting her face from Edward's. "Have you seen this before?" D.S. Lane asked. "No," Amelia said truthfully. She didn't have to. She understood the message. Whoever did this wanted her to see it. Wanted her to feel it. After the detectives left, Amelia paced the kitchen in a daze. The air felt heavier. The shadows longer. What was going on? She needed answers. And there was only one place left to search. Edward's office. He had kept it locked for months, claiming it was for important client files. But Amelia knew that wasn't true. He didn't even work from home anymore. That night, after the house fell silent, she crept upstairs and used the spare key she had hidden away in her jewelry box. The door clicked open. The room was a mess of scattered papers, open folders, and hastily packed boxes. Amelia stepped inside, her eyes scanning for anything unusual. Then she saw it. A locked drawer in the desk. She yanked at it. Stuck. She searched the desk for a key. Nothing. Frustrated, she slid a letter opener between the seam and pried it open. Inside, she found a red envelope with her name written across it in Edward's handwriting. She opened it slowly. Inside was a letter. Just 3 words. "Forgive me, Amelia." The morning fog lay thick over the hills of Bath, casting the city in a strange, ghostly light. Amelia stood in the middle of Edward's office, clutching the letter in her hand. "Forgive me, Amelia." Those words echoed in her mind like a whisper from beyond. She couldn't sleep. She barely remembered making tea or putting on her coat. All she knew was that she needed answers, and they wouldn't be found within these 4 walls. Her first stop was the Bath Central Library. It sounded absurd, but something in Edward's journal had stuck with her, the name, Margrave House. It wasn't a place she recognized, but he'd written about it several times in his entries, always with a strange, reverent tone. As if the name alone carried weight. Behind the counter, an elderly librarian named Mr. Cartwright helped her search the archives. It took hours. But eventually, a reference turned up, an old manor house on the outskirts of Bath, once used as a private clinic in the 1980s. Closed down after a scandal. Buried in silence. Margrave House. The name alone made her shiver. "I wouldn't go poking around there, love," Mr. Cartwright warned. "Some places are better left forgotten." But Amelia had already made up her mind. By dusk, she was driving through the narrow country lanes that led out of Bath, her headlights cutting through the mist. The road to Margrave House was almost hidden, a gravel path overgrown with weeds, barely wide enough for her car. She parked near an old stone wall and continued on foot. The building appeared like a phantom in the haze. Ivy-covered, roof crumbling in places, windows boarded or broken. It was silent, save for the wind whistling through the trees. Amelia stood before the great front door, hesitant. Then she noticed it. A light. Faint. Flickering. Coming from the upper floor. She climbed the stone steps slowly, pushing the heavy door open with effort. The inside was worse than she'd imagined. Dust blanketed everything. The wallpaper peeled like dead skin. The air smelled of damp and forgotten sorrow. She followed the flicker of light up the stairs, past long abandoned rooms and rusted medical equipment. And then she found it. A room with candlelight. Inside, a man sat in a leather armchair, reading. Her breath caught. He looked up. And smiled. "Amelia Whitmore," he said calmly, as if they were old friends. "I was wondering when you'd find me." She didn't move. "Who are you?" The man stood. He was tall, pale, his hair graying at the temples. His eyes held something cold and calculated. "My name is Alaric Jameson. I was Edward's therapist. Though I suppose our relationship was more complicated than that." Amelia's eyes narrowed. Where is he? Alaric stepped closer. He came to me broken. Not because of you. Because of Charlotte. He thought she could save him. But in truth, she was destroying him piece by piece. Amelia's voice trembled. What do you mean? She never stopped manipulating him. Not after your marriage. Not even after she claimed to have moved on. Edward was obsessed. An obsession makes men weak. He didn't want you to find out. Find out what? Alaric turned to a drawer and removed a small, leather-bound book. His final thoughts. His confessions. He asked me to hold it, in case something happened to him. Amelia took the book with shaking hands. Her heart pounded. Is he alive? She whispered. Alaric didn't answer. He just smiled. And said, that depends on what you choose to believe. Amelia sat alone in her flat, the candlelight flickering across the worn leather of Edward's final journal. Outside, Bath lay under a blanket of rain. Each drop against the window echoed like a heartbeat, steady and unrelenting. She hadn't spoken to anyone since returning from Margrave House. The man, Alaric Jameson, had let her leave with the book, saying only, be sure you're ready before you read it. She wasn't sure she ever would be. But now, with the silence pressing in from every corner, she opened it. The first page was blank. Then came Edward's handwriting, recognizable, yet more fragile than she remembered. To my dearest Amelia. She swallowed hard and turned the page. There are truths I never dared to speak aloud. To you, to myself, to anyone. And yet here they are, spilling onto these pages, like blood from a wound that never healed. I loved you. More than anyone I've ever known. That was never a lie. But I was never whole. Not truly. What happened with Charlotte wasn't an affair. Not in the way you might think. She knew my weaknesses. My past. My mind. She fed off it. Controlled it. I was just another one of her subjects. Amelia's eyes burned. Her hands trembled as she turned another page. It started when we were both barely adults. She wasn't like other girls. She was brilliant. Cold. Calculating. I was drawn to her like a moth to flame. But I never understood the game she was playing. I was part of her research. Her experiment. And when I tried to leave, she used my trauma against me. My fear of abandonment. My guilt. She planted doubts in my mind. About my career. My worth. Even about you. I broke down, Amelia. I didn't cheat on you. But I did betray you, in spirit, if not in flesh. I returned to her, again and again. Not because I loved her, but because I didn't know how to live without the pain she brought. Tears slipped down Amelia's cheeks. But she kept reading. The day I left for the retreat, I'd planned to tell you everything. But when I saw you asleep, peaceful, I lost my courage. I thought I could go away and fix myself. Come back to you whole. But she followed me. Charlotte. She infiltrated the clinic. Turned the staff against me. And when I tried to confront her, she made it seem like I was the one losing my mind. Alaric tried to help. He really did. But even he couldn't stop her. Amelia felt the room spin. Charlotte had infiltrated the clinic. Sabotaged his healing. She read on. If you're reading this, it means I failed. I didn't return. And I'm sorry. But know this, Amelia. You were my light. The only truth in my life. I write this not to beg for forgiveness, but to give you freedom. From doubt. From guilt. From me. Love again. Be free. Live the life we once dreamt of. Just, don't let her win. Amelia shut the book slowly, her fingers curled tightly around the leather cover. Her chest ached with 1,000 different emotions: grief, love, rage, clarity. Charlotte hadn't just taken Edward. She had broken him. And now, Amelia had proof. She stood from the chair, walked to the window, and looked out at the rain. She was no longer the woman who wept silently in the shadows. She was a storm waiting to be unleashed. The streets of Bath glistened under the morning drizzle as Amelia stepped out of her flat. Dressed in a black coat and boots, she no longer resembled the heartbroken woman from weeks ago. There was fire in her eyes now. Purpose in her stride. She wasn't running from the past anymore. She was walking straight into the lion's den. Her destination, the University of Bath, where Charlotte now held a prestigious position as a lecturer in experimental psychology. Amelia didn't flinch at the idea of seeing her. Not anymore. She had Edward's journal tucked beneath her arm. The truth was no longer hidden. As she entered the grand stone building, students bustled around her, unaware of the reckoning about to unfold. Amelia moved like a shadow, gliding through corridors until she reached the psychology department. There, on the glass door of an office, she saw the name. Dr. Charlotte Hawthorne. She took a deep breath and knocked. "Come in," said the familiar voice. The door creaked open. Charlotte was seated at her desk, her dark red lips curved into a smug smile when she looked up. "Amelia," she purred. "What a surprise." Amelia stepped in, shut the door behind her, and laid the journal on the desk. "I know everything," she said quietly. Charlotte's smile faltered for just a second. "Do you now? I know what you did to him. How you manipulated him. Used him. Sabotaged his treatment. Made him doubt his own sanity." Charlotte laughed, a low, mirthless sound. "He always was fragile. You can't blame me for that." Amelia didn't blink. "You didn't just break him. You destroyed every chance he had to recover. And I have proof." She opened the journal and flipped to Edward's final entries. Charlotte's eyes scanned the pages, and slowly, her face lost its color. "You wouldn't dare." Amelia leaned in, her voice calm and steady. "I will. I've already spoken to the university board. I forwarded them copies of this journal. If they have any integrity, you'll be stripped of your title by morning." Charlotte stood, her facade cracking. "You'll ruin me." "You ruined him first," Amelia replied. "This isn't revenge. It's justice." Later that afternoon, Amelia stood before a small plaque near the city gardens. It bore Edward's name, placed by the university in his honor, a memorial to a mind lost too soon. She placed a single white rose beneath it and whispered, "I kept my promise." A week passed. Then two. Charlotte's resignation made quiet rounds across the university. Officially, she had taken a personal leave. But the whispers had begun. The reputation she had crafted so carefully was beginning to crumble. Amelia, meanwhile, returned to her practice. Her clients noticed something different about her. Stronger. Wiser. Steeled by pain, but no longer defined by it. She often walked through the gardens where Edward used to read. The sunlight felt warmer now. The wind gentler. She didn't cry anymore. She remembered. And in remembering, she healed.